So first I'm going to show you how to measure and draw an eye in this video. It looks a little easy, but it can be deceitful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the height of the eye, and I like to measure to the opening right here, and then where the actual white of the eye ends, right about there. So I'm going to measure my height, and then I'm going to use the height to measure my width. So I've got 1, 2, and then just a little tiny bit extra. So I'm going to make up a new height for my eye, like that. I'm going to start measuring over here. So I take my height, and then I measure 1, 2, and I'll give myself just a little extra space over here. So you can see I've marked my areas. There's my height, there's my width. So the next thing I'm going to do is measure the angle of the eye. You notice that this eye, this corner of the eye, is just a little bit lower than that corner if I line it up like this. So I want to take that angle, like, well, it's not very angled here. I'm going to put it in here like this. So then I'm going to double check and make sure I've got the same angle. It's pretty close. Yeah, looks good to me. Also, I'm noticing that this corner is not the lowest part of the eye. The eye actually swoops down below that, here. So this is my lowest part, so I don't want my corner to be all the way down at the bottom. So it looks like I've got it just about the right place. The tallest part looks like it's pretty close to right in the middle. So this bends towards the eye a little, and then up, and I want it to come right to where these two lines intersect, like this. So I've got the right angle as well as the right length. Then this comes up and swoops down like that. So that's going to give me a basic shape for my arm. It looks like it needs to be a little bit rounder here, about like that. So I'm erasing my extraneous marks, that is, marks that I don't need. I'm just smoothing out those lines so I know exactly where they should be. Just like that. Perfect. And down here too, that needs to be rounder. Just like that. Perfect. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is put my circle in here. This is called the iris, the colored part of the eye. So if you say I've got brown eyes or I've got green eyes, you're really talking about the iris of your eye. Notice you see the bottom of the iris, but you don't see the top. Just because you don't see the top doesn't mean it's not there. It still exists, and it is still a perfect circle. So I know that it's going to go from here to just above, like this. So it's going to come to like right about there, if that makes sense. Then I'm just going to measure the halfway point between those, make sure I've got it right. Just about it. Yeah. So here's my halfway point, so I can measure my iris based on this point right there. So I'm measuring out a perfect circle for my eye, assuming that I would see the bottom of it, but not the top. Let me just re-explain that in case you missed it. I figured out how tall my iris was. Okay, it comes just above this line where the eye stops. So I put a little mark up here. So I made sure that my eye was just a little bit taller than the opening. Then I measured the halfway point this way to make sure that I knew exactly where the center of the eye was going to be. And then I used that halfway point to measure the rest of the eye to see how big it was going to be in there. So now I'm just going to fill in those marks with the best circle that I can make. If you're not measuring your circle, chances are you're not going to draw it correctly. Like this. So then I can erase that mark on the top. Now with most eyes, you're going to see the pupil in the center of the iris. because this is a photocopy of a photocopy, I can't really see it anymore, but I know about how big it's going to be. So I think it's going to be roughly that large. It's going to come close to the top of the eye. So I'm going to measure a circle from the same inside point out, like this, to make sure that I've got the right size. I'm measuring enough points to make sure that I get a nice, perfect circle, good and round the way it's supposed to be. I measure from the same spot each time. And there, now I've got a template for pretty close to a perfect circle. Like that. So I'm going to erase my center point. And actually, I'm going to start to erase most of my lines here. I just want to be able to see where they are. I want to make sure that they're visible. But because my next step is going to be going into charcoal with them, I don't want my charcoal to mix with my pencil because they don't mix very well. Right? I'm going to make just a little line over here for where my tear duct is going to be. Now before I start drawing anything else, I want to make sure that my eye is actually correct, because if you don't have the right drawing, it's never going to look the same. So the things that I use to compare are the white spaces here. And I call this is not an official term by any means, but this white space I call the tornado of the eye. You're not going to use that term in college, but because when I was a kid I used to draw tornadoes like this, and that's what I imagine this shape looks like. So I compared this shape and the corners to this shape and those corners to see if they're accurate. And to me they look pretty darn close. Then this side right here of the eye, this little white space plus the tear duct, I like to call it the crab claw of the eye, because I imagine a little crab claw that comes out like this. And then just sort of kind of this way. I don't know. And I see that this should actually be a little bit rounder right there if I look at that space. Okay. And then other than that, the rest of this shape looks pretty accurate here. So I'm just going to include a little fold above the eye. And in the next video, I will show you how to add the value using charcoal.